Few places on Earth have a reputation for paranormal activity on the same scale as the Bermuda Triangle. The name alone conjures images of ships and planes disappearing into thin air, never to be seen again. And those ideas aren't exaggerated. Hundreds of lives have been lost over those 440,000 miles of sea. It's no wonder it has earned the nickname, the Devil's Triangle. But what exactly happened there to start the rumors of hauntings, curses, and other unexplained activity? Listen on to hear some of the most terrifying stories that took place there, and see if you can work out what's really going on. Surprisingly, the first report of otherworldly things happening in the Bermuda Triangle dates back far further than people think. It was actually Christopher Columbus's crew who first saw something that made their blood run cold. They were on their voyage to the New World in 1492, when they began seeing the stars moving about in the sky. That alone would be disturbing enough, but it didn't end there. Columbus himself wrote that he'd often see a light in the distance that would slowly move up and down. But whenever he asked crew members to look at it, it would vanish before reappearing when only Columbus was looking again. But the crew would soon see something that assured them Columbus wasn't crazy. There are two versions of this story, so we'll give you both. The first says that Columbus and his crew watched as a ball of fire crashed into the sea in front of their ship. But the other version is even more mysterious. It wasn't a flaming ball crashing into the sea, but a giant glowing orb coming out of the ocean and rocketing into the sky. Some insist that the crew overreacted. They must have just seen a light on the shore or on another ship moving across the ocean. But those who believe the unusual activity in the area is caused by aliens will see this story as strong evidence to support their case. To us, that clearly sounds like a description of an alien spaceship. But since Columbus would never have been introduced to aliens as a concept, it's unlikely he or his crew could have invented that description. And some will say that adds a lot of credibility to the theory that aliens are present in the area. It's definitely interesting to hear from people who sailed there centuries ago, but that wouldn't be the last time something terrifying happened in the Bermuda Triangle. In fact, Columbus and his crew were lucky to make it out alive. Nearly 400 years later, another ship became famous, but this time it wasn't for the voyage she made. Her fame was all down to the inexplicable thing that happened to her in that eerie patch of ocean. This particular ship was the Mary Celeste. It set sail in 1872 from New York, bound for Italy with 7 skilled crew members, and the captain's wife and 2-year-old daughter on board. They were transporting barrels of raw alcohol across the ocean. However, they never arrived. On December 7th, a passing British ship discovered the Mary Celeste floating near the Azores Islands under partial sail. The British crew knew something very odd was going on, so they boarded the Mary Celeste. But what they found was more creepy than they ever imagined. The ship had been abandoned. Everything was in its place except for a sword found lying on the deck. People attempted to explain what might have happened, but none of them fit. They had been sailing in perfect weather, so it couldn't have been a storm that forced them off the ship. It couldn't have been a pirate attack, because all the valuables and alcohol barrels were still on board. But something must have happened because no trace of the lifeboat or any of the people on board was ever found. Did something terrifying happen to them as they tried to cross the Bermuda Triangle? Less than 10 years later, in 1881, it would happen again. This time, a schooner named the Ellen Austin was due to arrive in New York when the captain spotted a ship floating aimlessly in the area near the Bermuda Triangle. He watched the ship for 2 days, ensuring he wasn't letting his crew walk into a trap set by pirates. But when nothing happened, they went on board. Once on the ship, their blood ran cold. Everything on board seemed just as it should be. All valuables and shipment were in place. The only thing missing was a crew. There was no sign of life. The captain told some of his crew to stay on the ship. They would sail alongside the Ellen Austin to bring the ship back to New York with them. But after 2 days of sailing, the ships hit a storm that separated them. After days of searching, the captain found the mysterious ship again and immediately went to look for his crew. But he was horrified to discover that they were missing. Other reports of this story say the captain tried a second time to put a crew on the ship, but when they also disappeared, he abandoned the ghost ship entirely. None of those crew members were ever found, and nobody knows what that ship was. There's a disturbing pattern emerging from these stories. But shockingly, it's not just crew members that disappear without a trace in the triangle. In fact, that infamously dangerous place may be responsible for the biggest loss of U.S. Navy lives in a single incident. We are, of course, talking about the USS Cyclops, one of the Navy's largest fuel ships. The ship set sail from Brazil to Baltimore with 309 crew members on a perfect sunny day in 1918. It sent its first message back not long before entering the Bermuda Triangle, saying it was in no kind of trouble. That would be the last time anyone heard of the ship. After a time with no word, the Navy launched a huge search of the area, but there was no sign of the fuel ship at all, and none of the crew members were ever found. Since it never sent out a distress signal, what really happened will remain a mystery forever. And the same thing has happened to private ships too. In 1967, 2 men set out on a private yacht to view Miami's breathtaking Christmas lights from the ocean. 1 mile from the shore, the captain called the Coast Guard, saying he had hit something. However, he said there was no substantial damage. He just needed some help towing his yacht to shore safely. The Coast Guard reached the spot in just 19 minutes, only there was no ship there. No distress signal was sent, and the massive yacht was designed to be incredibly safe, equipped with flares, several lifeboats, life jackets, and more than one way to send distress signals. The ship and the 2 men on board had simply vanished. A search of hundreds of miles around the area took place over several days, but the yacht and the men appeared to have vanished forever. These are just a few examples of the more than 100 ships or crews that have gone missing in the Triangle. But it wasn't until air travel was invented that people realized it wasn't just the sea that was a danger there. The most famous incident that took place in the skies over the Bermuda Triangle was the disappearance of Flight 19. Right now, you're probably picturing one commercial plane that went missing, but it was much more complicated than that. The flight was actually made by 5 separate torpedo bombers during a Navy overwater navigation training exercise. We know from radio transmissions that were overheard by the crew on the ground that the exercise went smoothly before something started to go wrong. At least one plane reported that both of the compasses on board had stopped working. This is something that many pilots flying over the Triangle would report for years to come. Not long after, a pilot reported he wasn't able to change to the search and rescue radio frequency. And around this same time, a mysterious storm was fast approaching, and the sun was setting. But by nightfall, they still hadn't returned. The final message received from the planes indicated that all 5 of them had finally found their way back into formation. But even as a team, they never made it back. And that wasn't the end of the story. With 14 men aboard those 5 missing planes, the Navy launched a search and rescue operation as soon as they realized the planes weren't going to make it back. Multiple vessels were sent out or diverted to look for the bombers before sunset. One of the vessels sent out was a type of plane known as a flying boat. It set off at 7:27 p.m. with 13 men on board, and 3 minutes later, they sent out a signal saying they were en route, and everything seemed fine. That was the last time anyone heard from them. 2 hours later, a tanker reported seeing explosive flames leaping 100 feet into the air and burning for several minutes. The Navy later claimed these flames were the result of the flying boat exploding in midair. But what about the 5 planes that disappeared? They were never found, and official documents list the cause of their disappearance as unknown. At least 20 other aircraft have suffered the same fate while attempting to cross the Bermuda Triangle. The truth is, the cause of this disturbing phenomenon is still unknown. Some will try to explain it with science, or even say that the number of disappearances there is normal. But after the few stories we've just explored, that certainly seems untrue. And these are only the tip of the iceberg. Others claim the Triangle has an unusual kind of energy field that disrupts navigational equipment, but that doesn't explain the disappearances. Others say monsters like giant squid are responsible. Perhaps the most prevailing theory is alien activity. Could that be the answer? Or is the Devil's Triangle really home to paranormal activity we've never encountered anywhere else on Earth? We may never know. What do you think is going on in the Bermuda Triangle? Tell us your theory in the comments. And if you like this creepy video, you don't want to miss our other ones. Make sure to click here to watch.